March 20th, 2018 meeting of the White Bear Lake Conservation District order. We have a quorum, and so we'll move on. The agenda, approval of the agenda. I have something I would like to add. Kim, I'd like to add attorney compensation under executive committee.
Oops.
And that's it for me. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to add a website contract under education.
Any other items to be added? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second to accept the agenda as modified. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. The next item on the agenda is approval of the February 20th meeting minutes. And do we have any changes or additions to those minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My husband was there, number 5, and it says that Mr. Mahoney said he had been asking for a copy of the Harrods information from the county and was not able to receive it until 5 minutes ago when he was handed a copy. He was not looking for information from the county. The motion that had been passed in July had asked for a certified copy that the Harrods would present to the board. He had, we can get the stuff from the county off the website. We don't need to have anybody bring it to us. That was not at all what he was asking for. He was asking for the certified copy that the Harrods had been asked to bring to the board. And I think I have here, just a second here. He asked me to read this. He said he would prefer it say Larry Mahoney of 479 Lake Avenue, Birchwood, asked that all his comments be recorded in the minutes for future reference if needed. He felt that they are not being treated fairly or the same as Harrods with respect to the board's order issued at the July 2017 meeting. Mr. Mahoney had to appear at the January 2018 meeting to remind the board that the Harrods were supposed to be providing the board with written certification of the width of their lakefront. Moments before the meeting, Mr. Mahoney was shown a copy of the document submitted by the Harrods. Mr. Mahoney commented that the document falls far short of what the board requested. In closing, he requested that the board enforce its order equally to both parties.
Okay, thanks, Susie. Kim, will you go back and just review the tape from that meeting?
Of course.
For that portion, and just make sure that we have this language
Of course.
correct? Any other changes or additions to the meeting minutes? Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the February 20th, 2018 meeting minutes.
Second.
We
How
have a
can we-
motion and a second. All those are discussion?
Brian, how can we approve those when they're not accurate?
We'll approve the portions, I'm sorry, thanks, Susie. I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes with the exception of the public comment time, and we'll confirm that and deal with that at our next meeting. Mark, will you accept that?
Second.
Okay, so we have motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that motion passes. So we're on to public comment time, and we allow 15 minutes for items that are not on the agenda. If there's anybody that would like to speak. And Brian, if you could just give us your name and your address, that'd be great.
I've done this before, but thanks. 36 Moonlight Bay, Brian McGoldrick, Stillwater, Minnesota. There's some stuff going down right now at the legislature that we would like to read our opinion, our being the White Bear Lake Restoration Association and subsequently approved by the White Bear Lake Homeowners Association. The bill being contemplated is unwise because it is premature and disrespectful to the legal process. The bill may violate separation of powers and in any event is inconsistent with principles of comity and abstention. under which states, courts, and by analogy, branches of government defer to decisions or processes underway to reach final decisions in another state, court, or branch of government, not out of obligation, but out of deference and respect. The bill is premature for at least 4 reasons. 1, affected municipalities have a remedy to challenge any permit condition imposed by the DNR under the order by seeking a contested case hearing and judicial appeal thereof, and some have already done so. And because the permit requirement imposed by the order are temporary stayed pending Judge Marinen's decision on the DNR's request for a stay pending appeal. Subject to a pending motion for stay pending appeal, and DNR has announced it is appealing the order and can seek a stay from the Court of Appeals. It does not receive a stay from Judge Marinen. The legislation should wait until the appellate process of Judge Marinen's order is concluded. Also, this bill is inconsistent with the effort to protect the Eastern Metro drinking water supplies from both depletion and PFC contamination, and the reasons which drove the 3M PFC litigation and settlement recovery. A, if passed, the bill would hinder water conservation for the aquifers, accelerating their depletion, and even perhaps increasing the concentrations of geographic extent of PFC in the groundwater being used for municipal water supplies in the Eastern Metro. B, protection of the East Metro drinking water supply should include a safety net or diversified portfolio of water sources to cover risks of depleted aquifer volumes, increased PFC concentrations, and increasing purification costs if safe levels of PFC contamination for drinking water are lowered. Any potential to increase concentrations and geographic extent of PFC contamination is problematic because it may either make the filtration plants to be built with 3M settlement funds ineffective or prohibitively expensive to retrofit. And if the filtration and treatment of the PFC contaminated groundwater does not work, a surface water system will be needed. As a precaution against the risk, it would be prudent to plan for a surface water supply so they are available when needed. Perhaps some of the $850 million settlement for 3M could be used to build the surface water system for the East Metro to provide backup in the event of groundwater depletion or unsolvable PFC contamination removal difficulties. Thank you. We take this stuff very seriously, what's going on down at the Capitol. We worked really hard on it, have access to a lot of information that other people don't have. And we just want to share that information so that people can make some informed decisions and have an understanding. We're very respectful of the lake. We think it's a natural resource, and we're going to continue to make our best efforts to make sure that the lake is protected. Thank you.
And Brian, since you're up, if you don't mind, can you just, so I listened to what you read and, didn't understand it all. Can you just give us the 30-second?
I'll give you the 2-minute bullet point.
Okay, yeah.
The city's been trying to get together to circumvent the Georgia's order, meaning it's like, okay, Vikings would have won had they been able to have their coaching staff be the referees. It doesn't work that way, you know. You've got rules. We all have to play by the rules. They're down at the legislature right now. There's a handful of cities trying to change legislation to be able to circumvent the judge's order. That's what it is in a nutshell, and this is what, more of a legalese that Alan probably understood better than I did or you did, but that's what we're saying is that don't change the rules, let's let the process play out.
Sure, understood.
Okay. Brian?
Is that right, Alan?
Do you understand, I didn't pick up in that, what the connection is between our lake and the 3M PFC groundwater pollution?
Well, what they're saying is, 3M's included in the Northeast Metro.
Okay.
We're in the Northeast Metro. There has been some significant contamination allegedly from PFC. I think the 3M settlement neither confirmed or denied, but said we'll give $850 million to the state, for their lakes, for natural resources, for water supplies. And we're in the Northeast Metro. And no one, from all the time that I spent at trial with all the experts that testified, no one is saying that, gee whiz, we're not impacting the aquifer. The question is to what extent and, how widespread is the problem? Is it rainfall? Is it this or that? And there's a bunch of opinions. The judge made a ruling. The judge said, this is what the problem is. You can't be living off your aquifers. You need to switch over to surface water. There's ample excess supply in the Mississippi River. After meeting with the St. Paul Water, they told me 2 years ago it was the least amount of water taken out of the Mississippi River since 1961, and last year we were at 87% of that. So it's not so much a water problem, it's a water management problem. You have all this, you have a way to do it. Position is, there was a dozen, I think, water towers with lake water in it. We're saying that the lake is tied to the aquifers, so when, the aquifers are being pulled down, I think it went from 1 billion to 10 billion gallons over the last 15 years with the amount of water coming out of the aquifers. So that's why the judge put the water in effect, because if you see all the different tables that are used, it gets spiked in the summer. Why? From people watering their grass. That's like the number one reason, for using water, and it's what they classify as non-essential pumping, meaning essential is for drinking water. This was never, ever about taking away anybody's water. You can't take away anybody's water by state statute. It was like, hey, you know what? White Bear Lake is the canary in the coal mine. We got some real issues. We saw our beach closed. We saw our docks out 600 feet. We're on the front lines for that stuff, so it's like, state, as the judge said in the court when the state made the claim that, boy, Your Honor, $500,000 to solve the problem in the Northeast Metro, the judge's response was, you just spent $1 billion on a football stadium. Let's get serious about what you need, because if you look at the plans for the Northeast Metro and you look at what the Met Council has, for growth, the numbers just don't work. You can't get to your numbers. There's just no way, and we keep doing the same thing. The same thing being is we keep putting in more and more water towers. Why do we do that? Because we weren't smart enough to run a water line next to our sewer line. So there's not a water line for people to hook up as we keep going north, because they got to go back all the way to Maplewood to pick up the water line. We got sewer line going all the way, but we don't have a water line.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Oh, Susie?
Oh, I wanted to go down there.
Thank you.
Okay,
I need a glass of water for that.
thanks, Brian.
Susan Mahoney, 479 Lake Avenue. My husband, Kim, can you keep this on the record as well, please?
Yes.
My husband came to this meeting in February, was given this document that Alan gave him regarding the Harrods Lake frontage. And going back to the July minutes, the July minutes had a motion in them saying, it said, moved that the Harrods bring forward some written certification on the width of their lakefront, all avenues passed. Now, this is not certified. This doesn't even tell, it says approximately 43 feet. They've taken, I think, a photograph of the county records and cut and pasted where they felt they should put it. They don't agree or disagree with the width of their lot. There is no third party giving a certified stamp to this piece of paper. We are wondering how the board could ever accept this. We were told today by Alan in an email to Larry that the board has accepted this. This is not what the board asked for. In this motion that they asked for in July, the Harrods bring some written certification on the width of their lakefront, all avenues passed. This isn't acceptable. This isn't certified. This isn't what was asked in the motion. I would like to know what the board plans to do about this. I mean, if this is what they're trying to, pass off as certified, it's not. It's not certified in any way. I would move that since the Harrods have not presented a certified copy of their property, that they not be able to put their dock in until they do so to the board. They've had 8 months to present their certified copy to the board. When we were told to move, which was part of this motion as well, we were asked to move our dock last summer given 10 days, asked for an extension because we were going to Iceland and really didn't have the time to do it. We were told that we couldn't have an extension, that it had to be done before we went. I would like to see that same kind of accountability held for the Harrods. This is not an appropriate document. You know, in the discussion prior to the motion, Scott mentioned that the county dimensions should be acceptable. That wasn't in the motion. The motion said certified, a written certification on the width of their lakefront. So I'd really like to know what the board intends to do.
Okay, thank you, Susie.
Will I get an answer on that?
You know, Alan, do you have anything to add at this time? I mean, it's not an item on the agenda. We don't,
Chair and Board, if you were going to take an action, it should have been added as new business, of course. I would take in the comments, and the minutes don't lie. You know, I did get an email from Larry, and the response I got from the board was that what they provided was sufficient, and you've now got a recitation from the minutes. And so I think it would be appropriate to ask the Mahonies to comply with that and bring something that's certified from the county. You know, it's not that hard to do, and if that's specifically what the board asked for, then it's incumbent upon the board to keep asking for it.
sure, understood.
Yeah, I'm not, okay, I'd say, I'm not sure where, you know, going back to what I said back then in the minutes
Sure.
of, I don't know why we just don't take what the county says. And if that changes any, you know, and if somebody's denying what the county, what the official record said, then we need a certification.
Well,
Okay.
as the Harrods said on this document, this is an approximate, and there is ambiguity in the original plot. Lot lines and locations are approximate due to errors in the original plot. We have since these were published, registered our property. Our lines are very distinct. We know exactly where they are. And so Harrods have to go off our lines to show their property lines, which they haven't done. You know, and I think I remember Scott asking what was going to be in January, what was going to be the accountability factor for the Harrods. I think they shouldn't be able to put their dock in until they bring it forward to the board, because they are just going to procrastinate on this, which they've done for 8 months.
Okay, thank you, Susie. And I think that what we ought to do is let's get this on next month's agenda, and we can have a discussion about it then. Okay, thanks, Susie.
That will be 9 months that they will have.
Anybody else for public comments? Okay. New business, there's no new business, so we'll move on to unfinished business, and I'll take this opportunity to make the committee appointments. And I'll get you all of these, Kim. But the Lake Utilization Committee, Mark Gans will chair that, and Marty Rathmanner will be a member on that committee, and as well George St. Germain and Luke Machad will also be members on that committee. The Lake Quality Committee, Mike Peranto will chair that. Brady Ramsey will be a member of that committee as well from the board, and then as well as Jay Rendall from the community will be a member of that community, or that committee. The Lake Education Committee, Scott Costello will chair that committee, and Susie Mahoney will be a member. The Lake Level Resolution Committee, Jeff Rattay will chair that, and Barton Winter will be a member. And then also Mike Downing, Margaret Behrens, Paul Bolstead, and Bill Foussard will be members from the community. And I think that's it. So on to item 8, reports and action items. The Executive Committee, I'll give that report. Barton, you're on the agenda again. We welcomed you last month, but again, welcome this month.
Okay, thank you.
So that's that item. The next item is the assessment amounts to each of the 5 communities. Basically, the situation is that the board passed a policy about this time last year to identify what would be an acceptable fund balance for the board. And at the end of 2017, once we had paid all our bills we realized that we have an excess, or we exceed the fund balance amount, and so we need to take some action on that item to get us within our policy amount, or within our policy, which is between 150 and 200% of our budget. And I'll entertain a motion to get us into that, in compliance with our policy. Mike?
I did some numbers on it, and I based my motion on these numbers, that if we were to actually rescind the assessments for the whole year from all the communities, that we would still be within our policy. In fact, it would put us in our policy. Right now, we're outside of our policy. We're way above our policy. And although it sounds like a drastic move, we would certainly be assessing the cities the following year. But we could actually go a year without an assessment to the cities, and understood that they would be assessed the following year. This is just to get our house in order. And I would make a motion that we would rescind the allocations to the city for the 2018 year.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And, Mike, no, I don't think, or Brian, no, I don't think we're going to have any public.
There's so many things you can spend money on the lake that we need it.
So we have a motion and a second, and any discussion on that motion?
Well, I agree with
Susie?
Brian. I agree with Brian that there are quite a few things that we could spend money on the lake. I mean, now that the lake level has come up, we still have those little islands out off of Ramsey County Beach that have trees and rocks and all sorts of debris on them that could be a problem as far as boating on the lake. Some of that money might be used to remove that stuff, which, happened during when the lake was so low.
Any further discussion?
I approached that topic with Steve McComas when we were out doing the weed survey. And he said as soon as they get, I think he said 21 inches above the root line, that they will die. They'll just naturally die, and it'll take a number of years, but they'll go away.
I guess my concern still is for those boaters out there. At 4th of July, when there are a gazillion boats out on the lake, and those people are racing back and forth. I mean, we're out there every 4th of July, and
Yeah.
there are so many people out there. They're not going to be able to see those things there. It has a potential liability for the
Well,
lake.
it'd be better that they saw them if they were standing. They'd have a better chance of seeing them, because the rock bar is buoyed. I mean, I'm not against that idea, but if you cut the trees down, then they won't see the rock bar other
True.
than the buoys at night.
Well, maybe if the decision is
So-
to not remove the actual islands and the trees, is to put some type of,
We can't remove the island.
okay. No, I don't mean,
Okay.
I mean the little
We
strip
can't,
of
we
land.
we can't touch the rocks.
Okay.
Can't
Well, then
use that
perhaps
to
it would
do
make
that.
sense to put some lighting on that would be natural lighting that you'd garner from the sun and would reflect at night, so that people would have some chance
Yeah.
of seeing that light and that island.
I mean, yeah, I think, in terms of the motion at hand, we would have like $80,000 or something like that. I'm not sure if in excess, for all kinds of contingencies.
We would-
And if
with-
there, we would have to define what that is, if it's
Yeah.
putting lights out there, but we have quite a bit of money. I mean, right now, we are at like 200, well, at the end of the year, we were at 238%.
Yeah, we would,
Our
we would, by not charging the cities for the coming year, our fund balance would keep us within 150 to 200% of our budget.
And Susie, just to comment back, or to respond to your comment, I think there are probably, and Brian's probably got some ideas as well, I'm sure that there are ways that we could spend our money on the lake. I'm sure that we could find ways to do that. I think that my opinion is that we have to get right with our fund reserve policy. And this motion gives us an opportunity to do that. And if there are projects that we want to do on the lake, then it seems like it would be appropriate to get those into the budgeting process for the following year. And if there are things that are necessary right now, like say we have more Eurasian milfoil to treat than we budgeted for, then we'll have some funds left over to handle those exceedances. If other costs come up, we still have a fund balance to address those exceedances. So I think that major projects, we should try to get those done through the budgeting process. That's my opinion. And I'm not saying those projects aren't worthy, because I'm sure there are lots that are. But I think that would give us an opportunity to have some good discussion about those projects.
Okay. I hope that we do something about the safety of those islands, because there's an awful lot of young people, new boaters, whatever, a lot of boaters, certainly on the 4th of July, that safety measure would be a good idea.
And I think that we should continue talking about that. Do we buoy that island, that
Yes,
rock bar?
yes,
So-
completely.
Yeah, it's buoy.
So it's marked inside.
And there'll be more buoys this year than last year.
Okay.
Okay, so we have.
I would like, since I'm very new to this issue, if somebody could give me a brief, simple explanation of the budget and how we got the excess and where, we're going to dispense, is that, I think we're going to dispense some of the money back to the cities? Is that
No,
right,
we're
or
just not going to charge them.
Not
Yeah,
going to charge them?
And I
Okay.
can give you the quick background,
Or
Martin.
unless, if this is appropriate, I don't know.
Yeah, so we budget, the board budgets at our June meeting. We establish a budget for the upcoming year at our June meeting. And throughout the year, the fiscal year, which is January 1st to December 31st, we have income coming in from the cities, from people that want to have commercial docks, boat slips, those types of things. And then we have expenditures that we budget for. And we historically have been very good at keeping to our budget. And in fact, we've been very good at not spending all of our budget. And so over the years, the amount of money in our bank account has slowly risen. And we established a policy last year to try to keep that fund balance, to give the board some guidance as to what that fund balance ought to be. And, after a lot of deliberation, the board passed a policy that targets our fund reserve to be within 150 and 200% of our budget. And so, and that fund balance is, if we have, we have a pretty small budget, and if we were to have, something come up like another invasive species that we would have to address, or a lawsuit, or, these types of things that could, that weren't budgeted for, but could hit our account pretty heavy, we'd like to have that fund reserve for that. So that's where we're at with the fund reserve. And what this motion would do, my understanding of the motion, is that it would put us within our fund balance reserve policy. Right now, we exceed that.
So we wouldn't be charging the cities that border White Bear Lake this year then? Is that?
Great question, and that's the motion, is that we set the assessment for 2018, we set that assessment in June of 2017. We set the budget, and then we tell our member communities, hey, this is what we're going to need from you in 2018 to cover our expenses. And because we have this excess fund balance, the motion that Mike is making, it would basically not require the cities to pay any assessment for 2018, and we would just live off of our reserve funds for 2018.
And what are the assessments to the city? Is that something you can tell me right now, or it's in the
You got it, Mike.
They total about $75,000.
total?
Yes.
For how many communities are there?
5.
5?
But
Okay.
it's based on population and tax value.
Okay.
It's actually in state code.
So if you want to know
I
them
was
all,
going
you
to say,
can
it's
look
in
them up.
state law. It
Yeah.
sets the formula that's used, Martin, and then applied based on the budget and divided out per capita, basically,
Okay.
by population.
Yeah, and it varies quite a bit between communities. White Bear is the biggest, city of White Bear is the biggest tax base, and they pay, something like 45% of our total budget. So, it's not surprising that the city of White Bear is the one that's been complaining about it the most. But as, this letter that we got from the city,
Well,
they...
this is to keep us in our
Yeah,
policy.
right.
That's something else.
Yeah, well, it is something else, but you know, in a sense, we went into the year with like 2.5 or 2.4 years worth of cash.
Okay.
And, you know, when one of the issues is, and that's why it makes a lot of sense to just rescind the stuff, because, you know, we have all that money and then we're going and asking them for more when we don't need it.
Yeah.
So, you know, and if we do rescind, I think it would be equivalent to bringing that down from like 238%, which is way above our range, down to like, what, 859% roughly. And then that'll bring us a lot closer into the target by the end of this year.
And what are the average expenditures for a year for the,
We're budgeted for 95,000.
okay,
So we'll have a reserve of between 158 and 175% of that.
okay.
And Barton, did we get all your questions answered?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that motion? Okay, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda, which we added, is attorney compensation. The executive committee had discussions at our last meeting about about our attorney's compensation, and we would like to increase that, and so I'm going to make a motion to that effect. I'll make a motion that we change our attorney's compensation beginning April 1st to a retainer basis, and we make that retainer $1,000 a month.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second, and any discussion, and I'll just start off the discussion. Right now, our attorney's compensation is budgeted to be $6,000 and some, almost $7,000. And so this would up that a bit.
To about 12,000.
To 12,000, and it would change the way that we compensate our attorney. Instead of paying for every hour worked, we pay him a fee, and he takes care of all the hours worked that we need.
But there would be some kind of special request that would be above and beyond that.
I think that it would, my opinion is that that would be a pretty special request that would take us above the retainer fee.
Okay,
And
well,
I don't
like,
know what that would be.
for example, when we took legal action against the DNR last year,
Right.
they were about, what, $5,000?
And Alan, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, perhaps I can help a little bit. Thank you, by the way. My first year in 20 years of doing this. The retainer idea is just simply to keep the pendulum from swinging too hard when you do have legal action. And so a retainer implies that when you go to court, you're covered. And when you have to do things like initiate litigation, it's covered. And Brian's right. If it was something that required a lot of time and outside counsel and things like that that might incur something really dramatic, yeah, I think we would talk about it as a board behind closed doors, of course, because it would be attorney-client information, and we would decide as a group how to proceed and whether it's in the best interests of the board and whether or not you wanted to afford that kind of litigation. But for all matters that I've ever handled, certainly going to the legislature, going to court, all that would be included in the retainer, and that's kind of why, it's always hard for me to gauge. Obviously, you got kind of a deal when I did the litigation with the DNR because I know you guys don't budget for this stuff. So I give you kind of a deeply discounted rate even when I have to work sort of hourly. So I think that was maybe a number that we kicked around last summer or something like that. And it certainly is fair to me. And I would hope that you guys would think it would be fair to you. So given the stuff that we've gotten into and, the world gets more complex, unfortunately, not more simple. So I would hope, and maybe after a couple of years you say this just isn't worth it and you can always go back to something else. But it is a retainer essentially now, so what you're doing essentially is just raising that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So, now,
Are-
do you keep records of, and when they say retainer, that means you keep some kind of a record of hours worked on a certain issue or something? Is that,
Typically not in a retainer situation. In an hourly situation, certainly, like I said, for the work that I was doing this year, for example, or this last budgeted year, you weren't here for it, but, there was a fair amount of litigation that was essentially prosecuted by the board. And for that special stuff, I did in fact submit invoices with those specifically houred projects. But with a retainer, typically you don't.
okay.
Susie?
Can I ask a question? Regarding litigation, you did the lake litigation last year. Have we had any other litigation? Does it occur very often?
I would say, based on my experience on the board, it doesn't occur often, but people rattle their swords quite a bit, has been my experience. So you never know when something's going to raise up and turn into something.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not necessary, we paid a little extra when we were going through that determination of what it took to be a fiscal agent. There was some extra effort there.
Well, the way typically I work is behind the scenes. So I answer questions for almost everyone on the board from time to time. When there are dock disputes, when there's just general business that comes up, I go out and do site visits, and I accompany board members when stuff comes up. So a lot of it isn't necessarily run into court and represent the board. So it's just the general advocacy work that lawyers do for what I consider to be a municipal client, which is what you guys really are. So.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. That's it for the executive committee. The next item is the Lake Level Resolution Committee, and since that's just getting going, we'll pass that for this month. And on to the Lake Quality Committee. Mike?
Okay, lake quality, it's the time of year where we start gearing up for the ice off and looking at milfoil and zebra mussels and spiny flea and starry wart something.
It's some kind of wart, yeah.
Yeah, anyhow, all the invasives that you can think of, but we really are faced with Eurasian water milfoil and zebra mussels this year, and we want to keep the rest of it out. So I will be asking for a bid from Steve McComas, who's done it for a number of years, knows white bear quite a bit, and has a lot of credibility with the DNR when we ask to have things done. Along with that, I'll be asking for bids from some applicators also. This year poses some new situations in that the application we did last year really wasn't as effective as it could be, and it seemed like it was that way across the state, talking with some of the people, like mostly Steve McComas and the applicator. So there are different ways that they're experimenting. 2 applications, which would be twice the cost, which I don't think many lakes have picked up on or even want to address. But a higher concentration of the product that we put on would be more effective, and that's something that we're looking at a little closer. And we're not sure we want to go to that MD4 again. We're happy with triclopyr if we could just use a denser dosage of it. Also, there was a talk of treating the perennial spots first and then coming back for another treatment, not over those, but in the other areas that we find in the survey. So that'll all be discussed, and hopefully we can get some good answers and a good scheme. We kind of have a plan already, but we just have to work it out and be presented to the board as it unfolds. That's it.
Any questions for Mike? Okay, thank you, Mike. The next item on the agenda is the Lake Utilization Committee. That's Mark.
Agenda was pretty easy tonight. Well, could have been worse, put it that way. Start off with Tally's Dockside. This was a table from last month. And it just, we went over some of what the questions of the different types of boats are, which ones were actually rental. I didn't know what service work was. He actually does do boat servicing right on the dock there. They have mechanics that come out and work on the boats and things like that. So I would move to approve, however, would like to, so we do need to write Keith a letter to let him know. Right now, he's only showing payment for the 42 third-party rental boats. But if you look at our ordinances, we don't really distinguish between that or any other boat. So we'll be charging him $50 for the additional boats on dry dock and rentals and things like that. And that's, I move to approve.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion, any questions? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes.
Next on the agenda is the docks of White Bear. No change in, from last year in the, as far as what the dock structure is and where it is in the lake. Additional boats have been added. However, in the past, the owner has had even more boats than that licensed to him by the Conservation District, and consistently until the water went down. So we saw no problem with it, and I move to approve.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Next on the agenda is Black River Yacht Racing Association.
Question from the floor here?
Sure.
Comment from the floor? Can I make a correction? It's Black Bear?
That's what I thought, thank you.
We have it, Black Bear, on the application.
Yeah, it's a black bear there.
Is it Black Bear?
Yeah.
Yeah, on the application it is, but on
Black
the
Bear
agenda,
Racing.
I was just reading off the agenda.
Thank you.
So I'll make that change. So the Black Bear Yacht Racing Association?
Correct.
And we saw no issues with it. White Bear and Black Bear seem to do a nice job of having regattas on opposing days, and even though they're on the same day, they're not at the same time. So no problem, and we move to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Last White Bear Yacht Club, same, and we move to approve.
Second?
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That
And then-
passes.
Just as a note to add, we are looking at getting all these agendas and calendars for all the events on the lake and put onto the webpage. So people, if they land on our webpage, will know if there's a regatta going on that day, if there's a golf on ice that weekend, or polar plunge, things like that.
Any questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark. Lake Education Committee, Scott?
All right. We had a very successful lake cleanup the other Saturday. We had a record number of Boy Scouts and their families out there with their ice picks and stuff. They brought in a lot of trash. We're quite happy with it. We provide the trash bags. VFW provides free lunch for them. And it really went off quite well. I do, as representative of this august body, I do show up there and say a few words, you know, thanking them for keeping stuff from sinking to the bottom of the lake. And one thing I do is I do a shout out on which of the 5 communities they're from. Now, it turns out that the Boy Scout troop is based in Matamidi. So when we shout out Matamidi, it always wins. There was nobody there from Delwood. So that's a little challenge to all of our communities, because I do that every year. Let's see, the web traffic, there's a report on that somewhere. It is down from last year. And I don't know if people were more interested in finding information about lake levels or whatever last year. kind of a mystery, but we're hoping that with this effort we're putting in and revamping our website, that we'll see it being more attractive with newer stuff on there and people will get out there. We're also going to be doing a Facebook page, and all those things will drive traffic back to our website. And the only other thing I had was we voted last month to redo the website with social media for a maximum of $3,500 for updates and training. We made a couple changes to the contract, but that amount is still the same, what we already approved. So I don't think we need another motion, but what we need is a signature on the contract. Alan told us that normally the chair, and the treasurer sign it. We would like to get that signed. I don't know if other people can sign it in Diane's absence. I know.
You already signed it.
Oh, she did. So you have a copy
Yeah.
of it and Brian can sign?
Brian has it in his pad, his book thing there with a check for the deposit.
Okay, so don't leave without your signature.
Okay, so I understand no actions necessary because we approved it at the last meeting. I'll sign it, and that'll be the second signature.
Yes, and what we added at no extra cost, because we're such hard bargainers, he's also going to help us with the Facebook page. And Kim's working on that.
Thanks.
And I think since Facebook has 3 times as many users as Twitter, we could get some good action out of it. I know like the city does both Twitter and Facebook. That would be a possibility if we want to.
Okay.
Okay? I don't, that concludes my report.
Any questions for Scott? Okay, thank you, Scott. Treasurer's report, Diane is out tonight, so I'll cover that. I'll ask for approval to pay checks 4477 through 4481.
That's your motion?
That's my, that's my motion.
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second to pay those checks. Any discussion?
I will note that 4481 is the down payment, 10% on this contract
Okay,
that we just talked about.
so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, and I think that's it for the treasurer's report. Board council report, Alan?
Thank you, Chair. No activity through the court system. I guess all I can say is, as far as the litigation that Mr. McGoldrick was talking about and the corresponding legislation that's been offered, I'm obviously watching that on behalf of the board, so we'll see what happens at the Capitol, as they say.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and if you ever, if anything big happens, if you could just shoot something to Kim and she can distribute it, or however the right way to do that is, just keep
I'll do
everybody
that.
appraised.
Like I said, I'm watching the bills anyway as they kind of wend their way through the committees and whatnot. So stay tuned. The litigation isn't dead, right? But now they've got this other circle in the circus, so we'll see what happens. I would stand for questions.
Any questions for Alan?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Consent agenda, I'll make a motion to pass the consent agenda.
So, second?
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Announcements, Kim Johnson?
I don't have any at this time, just working on getting the website going and Facebook. I started that this week as well, so, but otherwise, yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Kim. So I'll entertain a motion. Mike?
What I was trying to say earlier, the invasives, we have Eurasian water milfoil, zebra mussels. The others to look for, starry stonewort and spiny water fleas. We get those, we got them all. And Big Winnie had an outbreak of starry stonewart right now, so. But we don't want to get it.
Okay, so now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
We have motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
What time is it that?